Welcome back to our channel, your premier destination for the most captivating and in-depth updates on the glamorous, scandalous world of the bold and the beautiful. Today is a spectacular day to dive deep into the intricate webs of deception, power struggles, and moral dilemmas unfolding in Los Angeles. Let us unpack the explosive drama awaiting us this Wednesday. The hallowed halls of Forrester Creations have always been a battleground where haute couture seamlessly intertwines with high-stakes emotional warfare. But the dramatic developments slated for Wednesday, April 22nd, promise to elevate this tension to unprecedented heights. Beneath the glittering chandeliers and behind the sleek glass doors of the executive suites, a profound storm is brewing, threatening to dismantle relationships and careers with equal ferocity. The narrative thrust of this upcoming episode masterfully bifurcates into two distinct yet parallel storylines of manipulation and moral compromise, centering on the agonizing decisions forced upon Melissa Dillon and the arrogant miscalculations of Ivy Forrester. As the legacy of the Forrester family continues to cast a long, imposing shadow over the lives of everyone in its orbit, the characters find themselves navigating a treacherous labyrinth of deceit, coercion, and dynastic entitlement that could permanently alter the landscape of their intertwined destinies. At the epicenter of this brewing tempest is Melissa Dillon, a woman who finds herself violently thrust into a moral crucible not of her own making. Following a series of highly volatile and emotionally charged encounters with R.J. Forrester, Dillon's position within the company has never been more precarious. Initially, the dynamic between them was defined by overt hostility, with R.J. aggressively attempting to force Dillon out of Forrester Creations, viewing her as an irritating obstacle in his relentless pursuit of Elektra Forrester. However, the upcoming episode reveals a chilling evolution in R.J.'s Machiavellian strategy. Rather than continuing to batter against Dillon's defenses with blunt force, R.J. has experienced a sudden, calculating epiphany regarding her true nature. He has come to the stark realization that Dillon is not a hardened, malicious villainess, but rather a deeply vulnerable individual caught in a crossfire of conflicting loyalties and unresolved feelings. This realization prompts R.J. to abandon his frontal assault in favor of a far more insidious and psychologically damaging approach, shifting from an antagonist seeking her termination to a manipulator seeking her complicity. R.J.'s tactical pivot is a masterclass in emotional exploitation, demonstrating a dark inheritance of the Forrester family's legendary ability to bend others to their will. He approaches Dillon not with threats of immediate dismissal, but with a seductive, venomous proposition wrapped in the guise of a mutually beneficial alliance. R.J. begins to systematically pressure Dillon, attempting to convince her that their disparate goals actually align perfectly. He paints a deceptive picture wherein their collaboration could effortlessly solve both of their problems. R.J. would finally clear his path to claim Elektra's heart, while Dillon could supposedly find her way back into the good graces of Will Spencer. The sheer audacity of R.J.'s pitch lies in its twisted logic, as he attempts to weaponize Dillon's lingering, complicated emotions for Will against her own moral compass. He is asking her to actively participate in the systemic dismantling of Will and Elektra's fragile bond, demanding that she abandon her integrity to serve his selfish romantic ambitions. However, the true horror of R.J.'s proposition extends far beyond mere emotional manipulation. It is deeply rooted in the stark, undeniable power imbalance that defines their professional relationship. R.J. is not merely a colleague suggesting a dubious scheme. He is the heir apparent to the Forrester empire, the son of the CEO, and a man who wields his legacy last name like a loaded weapon. As he continues to press his advantage, the implicit threat hovering in the air between them becomes suffocatingly clear. R.J. is leveraging his immense dynastic power to force Dillon into a corner, subtly but unmistakably implying that her continued employment at Forrester Creations is entirely contingent upon her willingness to play his twisted game. This coercive tactic places Dylan in an agonizing, virtually inescapable dilemma. If she refuses to participate in RJ's sabotage, she risks provoking the wrath of a young man who has the ear of the company's most powerful executives, potentially destroying her career and her livelihood in a single stroke. For Dylan, the stakes could not possibly be higher, and the internal conflict tearing her apart is palpable. She is a woman already carrying a heavy burden of secrets and anxieties, haunted by mysterious, disguised phone calls hinting at unresolved, dangerous business, and shadowed by the dark rumors surrounding her potential connection to the tragic death of Luna Nozawa. Amidst this swirling vortex of personal jeopardy, her job at Forrester Creations represents a vital lifeline, a singular anchor of stability in an increasingly chaotic existence. She simply cannot afford to lose this position. Yet, despite her vulnerability and the immense pressure bearing down upon her, Dylan possesses a genuine, beating heart. She has made it unequivocally clear that she harbors deep, authentic care for both Will Spencer and Elektra Forrester. The thought of actively inflicting pain upon them, of becoming the architect of their heartbreak just to save her own skin, is utterly abhorrent to her. She stands at a terrifying crossroads, forced to choose between her fundamental sense of decency and her desperate need for self-preservation, a choice that threatens to fracture her very soul. While Dylan grapples with the crushing weight of RJ's coercion in the design offices, an equally explosive confrontation is taking shape within the rarefied air of the executive suites, featuring the unrepentant Ivy Forrester and the increasingly exasperated Ridge Forrester. The spoilers for Wednesday indicate that Ivy will continue her relentless campaign of self-justification, approaching Ridge to essentially complain about the fallout of her own disastrous actions. She intercepted a deeply personal letter meant to reunite Elektra and Will, single-handedly detonating their relationship. Yet she struts through the corridors of power with an air of absolute, infuriating righteousness. When she stands before Ridge, she does not seek absolution or offer apologies. Instead, she seeks validation for her deceit. Ivy's psychological state is a fascinating, terrifying study in narcissistic delusion. She vehemently argues against the accusation that she is maliciously interfering in the private lives of her niece and Will Spencer. In her twisted, self-serving reality, she has convinced herself that she is a benevolent protector, an omniscient guardian who simply knows what is best for Elektra's future. She looks Ridge in the eye and defends her treachery as an act of familial devotion, completely failing to grasp the fundamental truth that love and protection cannot be built upon a foundation of lies, theft, and manipulation. Her arrogance blinds her to the precariousness of her own position, leading her to believe that her status as a Forrester shields her from the consequences of her abhorrent behavior. Ridge Forrester, however, is a man rapidly reaching the absolute limits of his patience. As the co-CEO of a global fashion empire, his primary focus should be on upcoming collections, international expansions, and the relentless demands of the haute couture industry. Instead, he finds himself constantly forced to play the role of a reluctant referee in the petty, vindictive, and endlessly exhausting personal dramas of his family members. Initially, Ridge struggles to fully comprehend the sheer magnitude of what Ivy is confessing to him. The idea that a grown woman, a trusted member of his family and his company, would stoop to stealing mail to sabotage a young romance is almost too absurd to process. But as Ivy's unapologetic explanations continue, the horrifying reality of her actions begins to crystallize in his mind. The exasperation radiating from Ridge is palpable. He is deeply disturbed not only by the act itself, but by the casual, almost cheerful manner in which Ivy admits to her profound ethical transgressions. As Ridge processes the depth of Ivy's interference, a dark, familiar shadow from the past falls over the conversation. The situation triggers a profound and painful sense of déjà vu for the Forrester patriarch, instantly evoking the formidable, towering memory of his late mother, the legendary Stephanie Forrester. Stephanie was, without question, the undisputed master of familial interference, a woman who wielded her influence like a broadsword, constantly orchestrating, manipulating, and destroying the romantic lives of her children in the name of her own rigid vision of what was best for the family. Ridge lived through decades of his mother's relentless meddling, experiencing firsthand the devastating collateral damage her schemes inflicted upon his own life, his relationship with Brooke Logan, and the fragile emotional ecosystems of his siblings. He knows all too intimately the bitter, enduring resentment that such overbearing control inevitably breeds. Drawing upon this painful historical context, Ridge delivers a stern, ominous warning to Ivy, attempting to pierce through her armor of self-righteous delusion. He looks at his cousin and sees the terrifying reflection of his mother's worst impulses, and he feels compelled to intervene before history repeats its tragic cycle. Ridge warns Ivy, in no uncertain terms, that her continued interference in Elektra's life will not yield the gratitude or obedience she expects. Instead, it will lead to devastating, irreversible consequences. He paints a grim picture of the future, telling her that if she persists in playing the puppet master, she risks alienating Elektra completely. He warns her that the ultimate price of her control will be absolute isolation, that she will lose the very niece she claims to be protecting forever. It is a powerful, sobering prophecy delivered by a man who bears the emotional scars of surviving a lifetime of exactly this brand of toxic, suffocating love. However, the scene is dripping with a profound, almost tragic dramatic irony, for Ridge is issuing this warning without possessing the full, explosive truth of the situation. He is cautioning Ivy about the potential of losing Elektra, completely unaware that the catastrophic rupture has already occurred. Ridge does not yet know that Elektra has already discovered the full, horrifying extent of Ivy's betrayal. He is oblivious to the fact that Elektra's fury has already reached a boiling point, culminating in a devastating confrontation where the young woman unequivocally severed all emotional bonds with her aunt. Furthermore, Ridge is entirely in the dark regarding the massive corporate ultimatum that is currently barreling toward his desk. Elektra's furious, uncompromising demand that Steffi Forrester Finnegan terminate Ivy's employment immediately. Ivy is standing before Ridge, defending her actions, completely unaware that the ground beneath her feet has already crumbled and that she is moments away from a total professional and personal freefall. The juxtaposition of these two unfolding crises creates a suffocating atmosphere of impending doom within the walls of Forrester Creations. Both RJ and Ivy are operating under the dangerous, intoxicating delusion that their Forrester name grants them immunity from the moral and professional consequences of their actions. They are both attempting to bend the will of others to serve their own selfish desires, utilizing manipulation, leverage, and deceit as their primary tools of engagement. Yet, they are both fundamentally underestimating the resilience, the anger, and the ultimate breaking points of the people they are trying to control. Dylan may be vulnerable, but her moral compass is strong. Elektra may be young, but her sense of betrayal is absolute and unyielding. The corporate structure itself shudders under the weight of these personal vendettas, transforming a sanctuary of art and design into a battlefield of emotional attrition. As Wednesday's episode hurtles toward its inevitable, explosive conclusions, the audience is left breathless, anticipating the moment when these precarious houses of cards finally collapse. Will Melissa Dillon find the inner strength to defy RJ's blackmail, risking her desperately needed career to protect the integrity of Will and Elektra's bond? Or will the suffocating pressure of dynastic power force her to compromise her soul and become a reluctant architect of heartbreak? Simultaneously, how long can Ivy Forrester maintain her facade of unrepentant superiority before the full weight of Elektra's wrath and Steffi's executive authority crashes down upon her? The stage is set for a monumental reckoning, A day of profound moral choices and devastating consequences that will leave scars on the Forrester family and their company for years to come. The drama is relentless, the stakes are existential, and the emotional fallout is guaranteed.